My talk is entitled Cognitive Bias, a Reflection and a Path Forward. And before I start, I want to give you guys a little bit of history or a little bit of knowledge of why I called this talk this. This is my first time going to Strange Loop, but I've heard about it since its inception. And what I knew is that Alex asked me to speak about something that wasn't technical. So I said, I can't just say what I'm going to talk about. I have to make up a crazy smart topic so people would actually think that I'm going to bring something new to the table. So a reflection and a path forward sounds pretty smart, right? So let me show you how this talk is going to progress. I like Twitter. It's another persona. It's not the real Bryan. It's the almost real Bryan. It's the Bryan that could be, the Bryan that might be, the Bryan that should be, but something happened to me today on Twitter, and I want to share with you. I think I've won Twitter today. I mean, literally. So, if you need investment advice, come speak to me afterwards. All right. So, on to the real stuff. I'll tell you why I do these little warm-ups. Last night I went to dinner, and we went down to Ferguson, and you know, you watch this on TV, but while I was there and eating, and then we drove through where everything happened, I started feeling a little weird, and come to find out, hey, guess what, Bryan? That's a panic attack. You know about those. And I was with friends, and I actually started cramping up in the car, and I just said, I have to get out. I have to get out. I have to get out. And if you know anything about anxiety, once you have a panic attack for the next couple of days, you're a little jittery. So that was my little warm up. Don't take that as what the topic's going to actually be about. There's some meat in here. So that's where I'm coming from. So if I start shaking, it's not part of the show. Anyone here? I know we're all, actually, I'm going to die. It's all techies in here. So it's all right. So let's get into this. I'm going to guess you're a programmer or write software or do something along the lines of making tech. Anyone who doesn't do that? See, this is awesome. Oh, see? I'm a teacher, but I know a little bit of coding. So the cool thing about this talk has no software in it. So it doesn't matter. I'm just going to talk to you as if you are a programmer. So, or you really like programmers. That might be you. I have groupies. Anyone else here? I have groupies. I mean, not in like the band sense, but I have a gang of followers, and they really like. So I want to talk about operating systems and talk about bias. Everyone here has their favorite operating system. Any Plan 9? I mean, I'm a huge fan of what Plan 9 could have been. I'm looking up. I can't see a lot of laptops here, but I'm sure there's some Mac users here. I'm sure there are some Windows users here. I'm sure there are some Linux users here. Are there any FreeBSD users here? Yes. This is actually your section of the talk. Because you, my friend, I know you like performant computing, because we know that when it comes push comes to shove, if you throw a MySQL database or a Postgres database on FreeBSD and same hardware, it may or may not be faster. It's not. Shh. You're ruining the story here. I'm talking about bias. But I was kidding, but there are parts of FreeBSD that are faster than what Linux is. So, and what I'm trying to get at is we like good driver support, so maybe we don't use FreeBSD. As a matter of fact, if you like good driver support, why would you use Linux? Why don't you use something like Windows? Because drivers typically work better on Windows. But why do we use what we use? Do we like the copyleft? I know there's some copyleft fans in here. I work with some copyleft people, and they're really, really into it. So whether it's LGPL, GPL2, MPL, V2, they're really into this. But some of us like our software free. Literally, free to do whatever you want with. So why did Linux beat FreeBSD? And the question is, really, why? And I can tell you right now, I don't have an answer. But what I'm saying is that certain biases in the late 90s actually led people more into the Linux camp than into the FreeBSD camp. Because I swear to God, in 1993, I said FreeBSD is going to be it. And I learned all about ports, and I learned about compiling my kernels and getting this. And then this thing called Linux came along, and my sound card driver didn't work. So I learned how Linux kernel drivers worked back in the, this is really, really early days. I mean, like all the way up before 1, up until 1, before 1.2. I'm like, I'm gonna write these Linux kernel drivers, but I was always wondering, why did we not use FreeBSD? And what I come to find out is that there is no real answer of why either one or either other one lost. What it is that certain biases kept us always looking in the same direction. So, what I'm here today is to talk about thinking about bias. And you know, I have to give you a disclaimer. I am not a scientist in psychology. I cannot tell you about cognitive bias theory. I am a pundit on Twitter, and I know what the two words mean separately, so we're going to put them together today, and we're going to have a discussion about biases. And other people, you might have approached this from see, it's a hard word for me to say, confirmation bias and how we are all implicitly biased. But I want to talk about biases in a different way, just right now. We can all agree that we either like or dislike certain text, and hopefully no one actually gets their feelings hurt about it. So, what's your favorite programming language? Just scream it out. Basic. All right, see? And what I did not hear was everyone say the same thing. Everybody has their own preferences, and you know your preferences come from who taught you how to develop it, who your idols were in developing, the school you went to, depending on the school you went to. So if you went to CMU, what language do you think that you learned the best if you went to CMU? Is any CMU grads here? That's right, ML. But let's say if you went to Stanford, what did you learn? And for those of us playing at home, I heard nothing, so Stanford teaches nothing. That's okay. You know, I'm not here to pass judgment. I'm just here to make the slides move forward. So, you know, personally, I like Clojure, but I cannot use it to make money because I'm not an old school hacker, but I'm actually a lot older than I look. And I did start with Common Lisp way back in the day. And I just never was able to be productive because I didn't get productive work when I was learning it. I learned it as a toy. So as I saw the lists and the schemes, and when Clojure came along, I couldn't be serious about it. And those were my biases. And you notice that I'm saying that it's not that it was good or it was bad. It's just what I saw as my preference. It was the people around me. Actually, the funny thing is I didn't grow up with any developers. I was that nerdy guy who wrote software. You know what? It worked out, believe it or not. But so I wasn't, when I was growing up, there was no one that I could actually debate on, you know, something, that C99, wow, that's much better than this Pascal that's coming out, and it's going to actually beat Pascal in the long term. Or, you know, I'm from DC area, and there's actually a lot of Ada developers. You know, Ada is definitely going to take off in the rest of the world. But, you know, I couldn't have that conversation except for me and myself. So I might be talking to myself right now. I'm bringing up memories from being a kid. But back to what I was talking about, why doesn't everyone like Clojure? And you know what? You can say it or not. It doesn't matter why everyone doesn't like Clojure. You like Clojure. And as long as you are productive in Clojure, it's all good. So I saw this tweet yesterday. And you know, I actually I hope this person said, I'm not doing this to embarrass or call this person out. What I'm actually saying is that even on Twitter, we say things that we think are innocuous, but come on. For me, the most relaxing thing about Strange Loop, nobody talks about Ruby. I'm not going to call any names out, but I can look out in this crowd and I see actually some very prominent Rubyists in this room. People who have done Ruby, who have done great things at Ruby, people who have done things at Ruby core. Now, so at the point where you were writing things on Ruby core, I don't care if you agree if it's good or bad, are you at the same level of developer as somebody who started hacking on Clojure 4 weeks ago and now knows, you know, they know about their cutters and whatever else? Probably not. So we don't talk about languages, and this is my response. Actually, I think I had a great response to this. And I always like to say, I like to approach this with a little bit of pragmatism. You know, I don't look at myself, I wrote Ruby for a long time for money. I wrote C for a long time for money. I wrote C++ for money. But guess what? At the end of the day, I'm a software developer. I write software for money. I don't care. Does that sound as bad as... But the whole point is that we should not get lost in the dogma of it's like championing your favorite high school sports team. At the end of the day, you're just in high school and it doesn't really matter, but go team. But don't get me wrong, I'm actually a huge fan of sports at all the levels, but when I come to St. Louis, I don't say, those Cardinals, damn, y'all suck. I don't say that whenever you lose the games, they shoot off fireworks, because they do, come to find out. I don't say anything like that. It's all good. Different strokes for different folks. So now that I've warmed you up a little bit, my name is Bryan Liles, and I am a software developer, evangelist, strategy type person at DigitalOcean. That's me last week when I was on tour. So what I like to do is I like to talk about weird and different things. I've done talks on neural networks. I've done talks on machine learning. And now I'm doing a talk. I don't even know what this talk's about yet. But we're getting into it. And a couple weeks ago, I did a talk on DevOps and how to build great immutable stacks. But what I find is that I just like to share all these good ideas with all these smart people, so I get all the feedback to make myself better. So really what you're actually participating in is my selfish experiment to be better than all of you. So, and I will say that in this talk, I do not represent DigitalOcean because I'm not talking about technology, but they did put a lot of money into getting me here. I took some of Alex's money, but I'm on a much longer trip. So DigitalOcean is sponsoring my trip, and we do good things. Look at us up on Twitter, and that's all I'm going to say about DigitalOcean. So, moving on into the harder parts of this talk. What does a software developer look like? So we've already decided collectively that all of us except for this fine young lady up front are software developers. And so, but I want to talk to you what I think a software developer looks like. This is Kelsey Hightower. He actually spoke on this stage yesterday afternoon or yesterday morning. This is a friend of mine, Malcolm Preston. This is Wes Felton. This is Jackie Alcine, New York guy. This is Eric Carlson, and I happen to work with Eric. But one thing that, one point I'm trying to prove is that, not everybody I showed you was a software developer. Do you know which one it wasn't? Which one of those guys was not a software developer? No clue, because guess what? You can't look at somebody and tell if they write software. And come to find out, the guy Wes Felton is not. This person right here, you might not know who he is, but if you are into any type of rap music or R&B, he goes by the name of Ninth Wonder. This guy right here, if you listen to R&B, he goes by the name of Raheem Devon. Very, very popular platinum-selling artist. And together, these two guys, this guy is actually a good friend of mine. They have a group called Crossroads out of DC. But the thing is that you didn't know he was a he was a musician, a rapper, a singer by looking at him. Because you know what? It's only a picture. And the point that I'm trying to make is when you see me up here, I'm only a person. But whenever I'm writing software, I'm a developer. And when all of you are writing software, you're developers. But when I look at you, unless you wear an I'm a developer t-shirt, I do not know that you're a developer. So, this is the hardest section of my talk. And I don't want to alienate anybody, but I can look around, I can actually see everybody in the room. And there's not a lot of black guys in here. And the reason I pick on black guys is, and this is actually, it's actually so simple why I pick on black guys. I am one. I can talk about the struggles of black guys in tech. I can't talk about the struggles of women in tech. I can't even talk about the struggles of black women in tech, because guess what? I'm not a woman. But for this point, I can talk about at least my struggles in tech. So, being black in tech, how is it? Well, it's all right. For me, it's all right. But I'll tell you why it's all right. Because when I was young, middle school age, my father was in the Army, and he got access to a lot of things. And one thing he got access to that he didn't know anything about was these C programming manuals from the Army. And he brought them home, and he's like, you're going to learn this. He said, but let me tell you why. Because funny thing now, I am 6'2" tall, but I grew 6 inches between my freshman, between I was about 18 and 20. I was actually not very tall, and I wasn't very fast. I couldn't jump very high, and I was very small. So football, lacrosse, track and field, basketball, soccer, those are, and guess what? I'm allergic to everything outside. So that wasn't happening. So my father, being the great man that he is, saying, well, this guy's going to do something. How about computers? You can do them inside. So I learned because there really was no other option. I didn't have the option, and I didn't have this thing where my father was, I hear this story a lot where people are like, I'm in tech. Oh, my father worked at IBM. Or, my mother did this and this when I was growing up. I didn't see that. Matter of fact, everybody, my mom is in clerical. My father he's amazing. I should tell you about him sometime. But he never did anything with computers. And matter of fact, my brothers to this day, they both are blue-collar workers. And they don't even want to be in tech. But I'm in tech. And I want to see more people who look like me in tech. But, we're working on it. But it's not all good. So everyone loves an anecdote. And I heard this anecdote, and I'm not going to attribute it to the person I heard it from. But I think it's actually encapsulates the best way of telling of everyone of how it feels to be black in tech. Now listen, this is actually, it's a really short story. So I'm going to tell you a secret about people in tech. Most development teams are full of assholes. Very and here's the reason why. You're smart. You know you're smart. And you grew up in a very smart bubble. You were probably the smartest person in your school. But as you become and you work with others, you realize that your smartest is butting up with someone else is smart, and now you have to prove that you're smarter than them, and then guess what? Now it's just like womp, 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 I'm better than you, I'm better than you, I'm better than you. And that's cool when everybody looks the same. But guess what happens when I come into the room? And that starts happening to me. The first thing I'm going to think is, whenever you're kind of being a jerk to me, well, wait a second, it's because of my color. And you're going to be like, oh, it's not a race thing. But guess what? Society has told me that it's a race thing. Things happen to people who look like me. So guess what? No matter what you say, no matter how you feel, you're probably not even a racist. I'm not even putting that on you. It looks like it's racism to me. And guess what? And when that happens, I take a step back. Not here, because I'm going to fall. But I'm also doing something else a little different. I've watched a few talks in this room, and no one's actually walked across the stage or sat on that seat. So I might do all of these things. And that's actually why my slides are black, because I'm brown, and I realize if I put white slides here, you would not be able to see me. Because, poor camera. So it's funny. I've been black for 39 years. I know what and what not to do. So that's my anecdote. So you realize what I'm saying. It's not that you're being racist, but to someone who doesn't look like you, they don't quite understand why you're acting that way. So there's a simple solution to all this. Just stop being a jerk. But that might be too simple. So another thing people like to ask me is, hey, Bryan, why aren't there more blacks in tech? And you know what I always say? I don't know. I know why I'm in tech. I know why some of you all are in tech. But we can't just have this question that we put out there and say, why aren't there more blacks in tech? I can give you a whole bunch of reasons why I think. Realize that slavery ended in 1860s, and then we had Jim Crow basically up to the 1960s, and even past Jim Crow, even at the end of World War II, we had issues where GIs were coming home. Actually, this is a good story. At the end of World War II, we had GIs coming home from war, and we had the GI Bill. And what people did the GI Bill, some went to college, some bought houses. And even the black soldiers were able to get this. But here's what the black people were not able to do. HUD, actually being a federal agency, could not discriminate. But what neighborhood covenants can discriminate. So what they would do is they would write in their covenants that if you sold a house to a black person, we would actually remove some of the funding from this neighborhood. So guess what happens? White people can get houses and have institutional wealth and generational wealth, but black people could not. And all they could do, they can only live in these sections, and then they can only live in these parts of the cities. That's why you have black parts of cities. Because guess what? It's not because they all wanted to live together. They wanted to live where all the good houses and the good work was. But guess what? They could not. So understand that those pipelines to the 70s, that's by the time I was born. And now think about it. If you have crappy neighborhoods, you have crappy schools, and you have parents, you have broken families. And what happens is if you have broken families, the kids at home are not getting that push that they need to do better in life. They're getting that push that says we need to eat. If you listen to Abby's talk yesterday, she said she worked 30 hours as a teenager. That kills me. But so if you don't know what you can't do, if you don't know what you can do, you will not be able to do it. It's simple. It's like if you tell yourself that you will not be able to do something, of course you won't. So that's not an answer, but that's a lot of the reasons. And guess what? There are black men in tech, and this is a generational problem. It's not a pipeline problem. Please do not go back to your work and figure out how do we get more blacks in tech. It does not work that way. But as the society gets better and there's more opportunities afforded to people who might not have had it, we will have a more diverse makeup. Or we can just wait because right now, children in elementary school, it's actually less than 50% white. So the world is actually trying to get browner. I mean, some of us are trying to stop it, but the world is going to get browner. So just by attrition, we'll make it. So I've gone 20 minutes, and I have like 60 more slides. So I put this in here because I wasn't sure what the crowd was going to be like. So why is PHP so popular? I don't know. Let's move on. So a path forward. So I actually, this was in my talk, in my title that we're going to have a path forward, and I was thinking about this. What's the path forward? I'm going to give you a solution, or I think I'm going to give you a solution, and it's not what you think. So Apple always has and another thing. So I'm actually going to change. I'm not going to change the sentiment of the talk, but I'm going to change the focus of the talk. And I want to talk about something else right now. For all the Americans in here, for everyone in here, this is Harrison Ford. He's Indiana Jones, my childhood hero. And he is going to be the focus of the rest of the talk. So thinking about how do we get more black men in tech, I always want to think, why are we asking that question? We shouldn't think of how to get more people into something. We should ask why they aren't there. Because once you start saying how, we'll start changing the rules. We'll invent things like affirmative action. And I'll tell you what, just as a sidebar, affirmative action sucks. But guess what the bad part about affirmative action is? It worked. It actually got people in places where they would not have been. But I don't want to be in a place because of my skin color. I want to be in a place because of my aptitude. So let's talk about hows and whys. So how is good? How is great? You want to know how to do something. You want to know how to write software. You want to know how to build these complex distributed systems. Knowing how to do it is good. But yeah. So how do we develop software? There's a lot of people in here. I'm actually seeing a lot of faces. There's a lot of smart people in here who know how to build a lot of disparate systems. You also know how to write your code. But why do you use Emacs? You ever thought about that? I mean, besides all the dogma of it's better than them, which is actually not true. I'm just giving you a benefit of the doubt. Have you ever thought why you use Emacs? Is it because that crazy Lisp in there is a great way to configure your editor environment because it thinks like you? Is it because you can actually have more than one size font if you don't use a terminal? And actually, I think that's the reason why I use it. I think that's pretty cool. But why do you use Emacs? Why do you use Vim? Because it's better than everything else, of course. But you don't use it for Vim script. Of course, unless you're Tim Pope, then you might use it for Vim script. But you don't use it for Vim script. Why do you use Sublime Text? I don't know. I don't use Sublime Text, so I don't know why do you use it. But have you thought, why do I actually use the editor that I use? Why do you use IntelliJ? It's because you're writing Java. That's easy, super simple. I'm sorry, that was a gimme. Why do you test your software? And actually, this is my ode to Gary Bernhardt. Why do you need to test your software when you use static types? I mean, that sounds silly. Your type system's going to tell you if your software is valid, right? That makes sense. That's cromulent, right? But of course, this is not what I mean. But what I really want to talk about is how versus why in software development. And like I was talking before earlier, what I said before earlier, how do we hire a more diverse workforce? This is not what we should be talking about. We should be talking about why we do not have a diverse workforce, and accept that, guess what? There are problems out there that we cannot solve. I know that in software, we've been very good about solving problems, but there's certain things in the world that we can make better without solving them. So, anyone know what this is?
HTTP 1.1.
Ah! Actually, you're wrong. It was HTTP 1.1. It's been deprecated. So now they decided that HTTP 1.1 was so awesome, we're going to put it in 8 RFCs. But actually, no, that was a trick question. So basically, and this is more trolling on, there's no Ruby at this conference. Yeah, this is some Rails controllers. And I actually did this little section before in a Ruby talk, and I went down the path and I said, well, do you know what this RFC is? And people were like, and I said, well, what do you do for a living? And people were like, well, we write Rails. And I said, and you know about HTTP gets and posts and puts and deletes and options ahead? And they said, yeah. And I said, well, how do you know about that? Well, we found it on the internet. And I said, well, have you read the documentation? Well, yes. I said, well, have you heard of the RFC? They said, yes. I said, I don't believe you. Because guess what? That RFC actually displays everything you're doing. If you're not reading the RFCs or papers, how do you really know? It's like playing telephone. When you play telephone, you talk to the first person, and then the message changes a little bit. And by the time you get to the 10th person, the message is broken. You are the 11th person. So think about that. So back to this one. Like I said, I wanted to show the proof. It has been superseded a couple of times, but wow, I really was into this. I thought I was. I'm all over the place. So realize what I'm doing here. I am telling you little anecdotes in lieu of giving you technical content to try to make you think about just biases in general. I'm not asking you to accept anything new. I'm asking you to change your ways. And I really want you to look at the man in the mirror. Sorry, I tried. But back to what I was talking about. I'm really trying to get you to think about things from, like, there is your point of view, and your point of view may be correct. But the crazy thing about correctness in the real world is it's not black and white. You can be correct. I can say, is this cup half empty or is it half full? And I'm still correct. And then some nerd's going to say, well, no, it's full of H2O at the bottom and nitrogen and oxygen at the top. And then I'm going to say, well, no, that's actually dumb. You know what I'm talking about here. So what we need to, and by bringing this up in these kinds of ways, I'm just trying to make you think that when you think you're correct, you're only correct in that situation where you are. Are you correct in situation for the person sitting next to you? How can you help the person sitting next to you actually feel better about their working environment? How can you make the person that you haven't even met yet feel better about their working environment? And I don't know, but it's something to think about. So how do we get more women in software development? How do we get more minorities in software development? This is a hot button for me. This word is the defeatist word. Please stop using it. It's defeatist. By calling us minorities, you've already signified that we are less. And guess what? We're not less. We're equally as bad, awful, great, amazing as everyone else. So people are suggesting underrepresented. I don't know. It's a lot of syllables. So earlier, I saw a talk where someone mentioned that they were replacing millennials with words, like with snakes. Whenever you see minorities, just think awesomeness. It'll help. It'll help. So how do we get more of these people in software development? I don't know. But I do know this. And I'll read this out loud. Says, wishing for minorities and women to attend your tech conference is like having a party and inviting all dudes. And it'll take a second, and you'll realize that what I'm saying is that if you have a conference or an event or a workplace and you're saying, how do we get more women in here? You've already lost. You are asking the wrong question. Why are they not there? That's the question you should answer. And the true answers are having more women and awesome people in your leadership. I mean, that will go as far. Hiring a woman to be your CTO will actually change the way you do business, because guess what? Women are wired differently than men, and it's not a race thing. It's just women are wired differently than men. They have babies. They have to be amazing. So, how versus why in the real world? And like I said, a stream of amazing coming at you here. So there's no such thing as bad code, unless it's bad code, of course. So do you want to be a better software developer? You need to code like Indiana Jones. I did say this was the Indiana Jones section. So what does that mean? You get a whip. You go treasure hunting. You should always be looking for the jewels in the rough. I don't know what that means, but you'll know what it means. There's jewels in your code base. There's jewels on the internet. There are no jewels on Hacker News unless you read it like I do, which is you go to the comments first, you sort them, or you get something to sort them, and you read the first sentence of the first comment. If it's negative, you just stop reading. It's not even worth the article's not even worth it. But if it is, then you can go read the article. Don't be afraid to throw a punch. Seriously, things are messed up for a lot of people right now. So if you have to go to bat for someone or yourself, you should not be afraid to do that. A whip is useful. I actually do not have an anecdote for this. I just think a whip is useful. It belongs in a museum. I would say that about your code. Realize the code that you wrote yesterday is legacy, and if you need to figure out one thing, or two things. You need to figure out that you are a person. Your code is this object that lives in bits on your system. You are not your code. So if someone talks about your code, they are not talking about you. So if they get upset, like you say, hey, Brian, your code sucks, you know what I'm going to say? Yeah, whatever, I had to poop or something. And you know what? I'm fine with that because I've been pooping for 39 years. But realize that you are not your code. And actually, that's actually a defense mechanism that I've learned as a black developer, is that I have to develop a thick skin. So sometimes people will talk to me and they're like, Brian, do you remember me? And I'm like, no. And usually it's not because I don't. It's just because I'm like, I'm a little tense right now because it's a weird situation for me. But remember, your code is an artifact. You can treasure it, or most likely you can just get rid of it and rewrite it or make it better. I'm not saying rewrite your whole projects. I'm just talking about these little bits. And I hate snakes. So, I told you, this is crazy. So, how do we succeed? We iterate on an idea, we fail miserably, we pivot, we ... and we profit. I don't understand that. So let's talk about how versus why. So how is always less than why, and why is always greater than how. And I'm going to leave you with an anecdote and some quotes, and then I'm going to say thank you, and then we're going to clap, and then we're going to go to break. So, more success, more money. So in business, they tell us more money equals more success, right? That's your company is successful if it makes more money. And I looked at the code of conduct, and I actually was scared, because I want to talk about unicorns, because being a unicorn is very, very important these days. We want more unicorns. And for those of you who do not know what unicorns are, there are these businesses or startups who are worth $1 billion. Not who have made $1 billion, but who are worth $1 billion. And I apologize for the unicorn porn. So, I did think about that, but I just wanted to make sure that I didn't offend anybody with unicorns. I'm not unicornist. But back to my story. So understanding builds trust. If you understand where I'm coming from, you are more likely to trust me. We can agree with that. So, and then also, more trust equals more speed, because if I trust you and I trust my mechanisms, when I trust my processes, I will move faster. We know this as dev teams get better, they're more diverse, and they have great ways of working together where they actually end up shipping code better, faster, cheaper, right? So more understanding should equal more speed. And if more speed should equal more money. So understanding why, Because when you understand why, you're building that trust because you actually understand where you're coming from, you should have more money. And this is my slide to satisfy anyone who's in charge of budgets. You can take this back to your companies and you can run with this. I'll give it to you for free. So in conclusion, I love being able to create software for a living. Raise your hand if you love being able to create software for a living. We are in a very unique position where we actually get to do our hobby, for some of us, not all of us, as a job. And they pay us way more money than sometimes I think they should to do this. I'm not saying that I will take any less money to do this. I'm saying that, and I'll tell you, my brother's an electrician. He does not make a lot of money, but his job is legitimately dangerous. A couple weeks ago, he actually was in an explosion, 3rd-degree burns up here, in his face. He's in the hospital for almost a week. And I will tell you, he does not make a lot of money. We literally make multipliers. Most people in this room make multipliers of what he's making, and he does legitimately dangerous work. We are lucky people. Let's act like it. So how is good? Why is great? And I will leave you with a couple quotes from famous people of our time. Arthur C. Clarke says, "The only way to discover the limits of the possible is to go beyond them into the impossible." Fair, I agree with that. But another great poet said, "Difficult takes a day, impossible takes a week." This is my doppelganger, Jay-Z. Wink, wink. And then another famous poet says, "Today was a good day." And my actual point was, like I was saying, is I'm here to lower your defenses about biases. I'm up here talking about some crazy topics that, are very hard for some of us to actually comprehend. But I'm putting it to you in a way that if we don't take ourselves so lightly, we can actually move forward. And I think that's really the goal here, is that we take ourselves too seriously, and we should realize that people who are not like us actually can help us. And ultimately, at the end of the day, we all really like the same thing. So, with that, I'm Bryan Liles, and thank you for attending my talk, my non-technical talk at Strange Loop. Wow. And you've been great.